There is a quiet kind of exhaustion that comes from constantly saying yes when every part of you wants to say no. It doesn't always look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes it looks like answering messages late at night when you're already drained. It looks like agreeing to plans you don't have the energy for. It looks like taking on extra work when your plate is already full. It looks like smiling and reassuring others while quietly feeling overwhelmed inside. For many people, saying no feels heavier than it should. It doesn't feel like a simple boundary. It feels like a moral failure, a betrayal, a rejection, a moment that threatens connection. And so, instead of protecting their own limits, they choose discomfort. They choose overextension. They choose self-sacrifice. And afterward, they feel tired, resentful, and confused about why they keep putting themselves last. If you've ever felt guilty for protecting your time, your energy, or your emotional space, you're not weak. You're not selfish. You're not broken. You're responding to patterns that were formed long before you ever learned the word boundary. Most people who struggle to say no did not grow up feeling emotionally safe when they expressed limits. Somewhere early in life, they learned that approval was conditional, love was earned, safety depended on being agreeable, helpful, and easy to deal with. Maybe you were praised for being the good child, the one who didn't cause trouble, the one who took care of others, the one who stayed quiet when things were hard. Maybe you learned that your needs were inconvenient. Maybe you noticed that when you asked for too much, people pulled away. Maybe you were met with disappointment, silence, or emotional distance when you tried to assert yourself. So you adapted. You learned to read the room before speaking. You learned to anticipate what others needed. You learned to adjust yourself to fit expectations. You learned that being loved meant being useful. Being wanted meant being flexible. Being safe meant being agreeable. Over time, this becomes automatic. You don't consciously think, if I say no, I'll lose connection. You just feel a wave of anxiety, guilt, and discomfort when the word no enters your mind. Your nervous system treats it like danger, because emotionally, it once was. For many people, guilt around saying no is not about politeness. It is about survival. It is about avoiding abandonment, conflict, rejection, or emotional withdrawal. It is about maintaining harmony at any cost. As adults, this pattern shows up in subtle but powerful ways. You agree to help when you're exhausted. You stay in conversations when you need rest. You take on responsibilities that aren't yours. You delay your own needs indefinitely. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. You soften your boundaries so no one feels uncomfortable. On the surface, you look kind, reliable, supportive, strong. Inside, you often feel overwhelmed, invisible, drained, unappreciated, and sometimes quietly resentful, but you rarely express that resentment because that would feel wrong. It would feel selfish. It would feel like you're failing at being good, so you swallow it. People who feel guilty for saying no often carry a deep belief that their worth is tied to how much they give. They feel valuable when they are needed. They feel important when they are depended on. They feel secure when they are indispensable. So when someone asks for something, it activates that belief. If I help, I matter. If I agree, I'm good. If I say yes, I'm safe. If I say no, I might disappoint. I might hurt them. I might lose them. I might become unlovable. Even when there is no evidence that this will happen, the emotional memory remains. This is why guilt shows up so strongly. Guilt is not just about behavior. It is about identity. It is the fear of becoming someone bad in the eyes of others. For people who grew up being rewarded for self-sacrifice, boundaries feel like betrayal. Rest feels like laziness. Prioritizing yourself feels like abandonment. Choosing your needs feels like cruelty. So you become your own last priority. Over time, this creates emotional consequences that are rarely talked about. Chronic people-pleasing leads to burnout. Burnout leads to numbness. Numbness leads to disconnection from yourself. You start losing touch with what you actually want. You stop recognizing your own limits until you've crossed them. You struggle to identify your preferences because you're so used to adapting to others. You might notice that you feel tired even after resting, that you feel irritated over small things, that you sometimes fantasize about disappearing for a while. that you feel trapped by obligations you agreed to, and then you feel guilty for feeling that way. This creates a painful cycle. You say yes to avoid guilt. You feel overwhelmed. You feel resentment. You feel guilty for the resentment. You say yes again to make up for it. And the pattern continues. In relationships, this often looks like emotional overfunctioning. You become the listener, the fixer, the supporter, the one who remembers birthdays, the one who checks in, the one who adapts. But your own emotional needs remain unspoken. You might tell yourself, "It's fine, I don't need much." But deep down, you long to be met halfway. You long to be chosen without having to earn it. Sometimes people who struggle to say no attract partners, friends, or coworkers who are comfortable taking, not always intentionally. But unconsciously, boundaries teach people how to treat us. When you never say no, others never learn where you end. This doesn't mean it's your fault. It means you were never taught that your limits matter. Psychologically, this pattern is often connected to anxious attachment, emotional neglect, or early responsibility. Many people who learn to care for others before they were cared for themselves develop hyper-responsibility. They feel responsible for other people's feelings, other people's comfort, other people's happiness. So when someone is disappointed, you internalize it. When someone is upset, you blame yourself. When someone is struggling, you feel obligated to fix it. You carry emotional weight that was never meant to be yours. Saying no threatens that identity. It says, "I am not responsible for everything." And that can feel terrifying, but here's the truth that slowly heals this pattern. Your needs are not an inconvenience. Your limits are not rejection. Your rest is not selfish. Your no is not a failure. It is information. It is honesty. It is self-respect. Learning to say no is not about becoming cold. It is about letting your yes actually mean yes. Because when you say yes out of guilt, it is not generosity. It is self-abandonment. And your nervous system knows the difference. At first, practicing boundaries feels awful. You will feel anxious. You will feel guilty. You will replay the conversation in your head. You will worry about how you were perceived. You will feel selfish even when you weren't. That doesn't mean you did something wrong. It means you are rewiring a survival pattern. Guilt is not always a moral signal. Sometimes it is just a habit. With time, something shifts. You start noticing that people who truly care about you respect your limits. You start feeling more energy. You start feeling more present. You start trusting yourself. You start experiencing relationships that are mutual. You realize that the people who disappear when you say no were never attached to you. They were attached to your availability. And that is a painful but freeing truth. Healing this pattern means learning to tolerate discomfort. It means allowing others to feel disappointed sometimes. It means accepting that you cannot be everything to everyone. It means choosing self-respect over approval. It also means learning to speak to yourself with compassion. Instead of, "I'm selfish," you say, "I'm protecting my capacity." Instead of, "I'm letting them down," you say, "I'm being honest." Instead of, "I should push myself," you say, "I deserve rest." Over time, your identity shifts. You are no longer the person who exists to serve. You become the person who exists to live. You learn that you are worthy even when you are unavailable. You are lovable even when you disappoint. You are enough even when you say no. And slowly, your yes becomes lighter. Your relationships become healthier. Your inner world becomes calmer. You stop living in constant emotional debt. You start living in alignment. If you struggle with guilt when saying no, it means you have a big heart. It means you value connection. Now it is time to include yourself in that care. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to have limits. You are allowed to choose yourself. And every time you say no with honesty and kindness, you are teaching your nervous system that you are safe, that you are worthy, that you do not have to disappear to be loved. That is not selfishness. That is healing.